Peace in our time. The peace in the Middle East. Oslo Accords 2.0. This and many more ideas have immediately popped into my head when I saw the most recent headlines that came out today, but we were also hearing about them yesterday. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Today it's gonna be a solo of me, Daniel, and it's gonna be more of a informative episode, but I also have a lot of observations that should be really interesting. So make sure to watch. So what has happened? Both Israel and finally Hamas has agreed to another ceasefire, or have agreed to a potential permanent ceasefire, or at least a road to a permanent ceasefire. So what has happened actually? So basically, a framework has been established for negotiations, and mainly because Hamas backed down from the demand that the part of these negotiations, or at least in the first phase of the negotiations, will be basically like a written guarantee from Israel that they will commit to pulling out, they will commit to finishing the war. Instead, they dropped it, and it's gonna work a bit differently. Uh, but also, both sides had agreed that neither side will actually govern Gaza. So Hamas will not be allowed to stay in Gaza, but also Israel will have to pull out of Gaza. Instead, what will happen is that the Palestinian Authority will come in. That has been proposed for a while. The idea that some third party would come in and govern instead has been an idea for a while. I've heard that potentially Saudis could come in, or I think I've even heard some that United Arab Emirates could come in, but Palestinian Authority has been chosen in the end. So what is it going to be? It's going to be a U.S. trained force of 2,500 supporters of the Palestinian Authority that have already been vetted by Israel. So Israel is okay with them being there. But so about the plan, it's a three-phase plan. We'll talk about the specifics a little bit, but it's basically so we've talked about this with Morgan, I believe, in the past, and I mentioned that we will talk about it in the future. It is basically it is basically the Biden's plan. It's very similar to it. I think there are just a couple changes, but most of them I'd say are cosmetical. The fundamental ideas that Biden brought in are basically in this plan. Uh, so okay, I think I'll mention a couple more things. So with this plan coming, Saudi Arabia has also hinted towards normalization. Uh, for those who don't know, basically before October 7th, there was a plan that Israel would normalize relationships with Saudi Arabia. Uh, Many people were saying that Saudi Arabia shouldn't do it because they shouldn't morally sanction the Israeli state, while we on the show were arguing that Israel should normalize relationships with dictatorships. But so basically, yeah, Saudi Arabia hinted towards normalization, and they also hinted that they would like to see a potential path towards a Palestinian state too. Um, and also something that we have mentioned in the past. So it really seems like a lot of the past episodes are coming in together and everything is connecting. So Qatar has also told the Hamas that if negotiations fail, they will not be welcome in Doha, which is something that has been going on for a while. That basically, because Hamas has been not accepting this deal, that Qatar has been basically applying pressure on them, and potentially even would uh, get them out. And also, I'll try to interact more with the chat since it's only me. So if you have any ideas or if you have any questions, I might miss out something. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So let's quickly just go through what the deal is, and then we'll talk about what I think about it. So the first phase is I'm not sure if I have the right number because I quickly looked it up. The numbers might be different, but the idea is some of that basically Hamas will release a few dozens of hostages. I have the number 33. It might not be actually right, but basically they will release. So this would be like 25% of the. So we think there are still about 120 hostages, although we are not sure how many of them are alive. But that they would basically release a certain amount of hostages, and also Israel would release prisoners. Just I guess I'll already put my point in. Something that should be always considered is that uh, the hostages Hamas is holding are men, women, children that they kidnapped on October 7th. They violently took, while the prisoners that Israel holds are people who tried to kill people and kidnap people on October 7th and have simply failed and got caught. So it's already, and also I have it here that Israel would release 30 to 50 prisoners, which is more uh, they will basically release more prisoners than that Hamas releases hostages, which is not something surprising. It's something we've seen in the past. That's what happened the last time. So it's not unexpected to see that Israel would release more than Hamas. And also Israel, this is still the first phase. Israel will allow aid to go in. I should just clarify, it means more aid to go in. Although I'm not sure how it's right now because I've seen it's much lower than it used to be. But basically, there was very little time of these. I mean, what is it now? 9 months when there was actually no aid coming in. But basically, they would allow for more to go in. And also this first phase would go on for 92 days. So the hostages release wouldn't happen at once, but would I don't have specifics, but maybe every week they would release a few, or every 2 weeks, or maybe every day they would release a few until those 42 days until they release all of them, or release the number. They won't release all of them in the first phase. During those 6 weeks, during those 42 days, there should be basically there should be discussions on a permanent ceasefire. So then we go to the second phase, and basically this temporary ceasefire in the first phase can extend over the 6 weeks if the negotiations continue. So if Israel is still negotiating with Hamas about the specifics, this can be extended. So then the phase 2 is permanent ceasefire. Hamas will release all remaining hostages, but also Israel will continue releasing prisoners and slowly pull out of Gaza. That's pretty much the second phase, which is permanent ceasefire. And then the third phase is that and also I believe in the second phase, the Palestinian Authority people will start coming in. And then in the third phase, I think it's pretty much that Israel completely pulls out, and also the remains of any deceased Israeli hostages will be returned. This is something we've talked about in the past episode when we talked about the Biden deal. Again, Israel is literally negotiating for bodies of murdered people. So let me just quickly glance to the chat. Thank you, Bonnie, for your super chat. No ceasefire while negotiations are ongoing. You either surrender now with more, or you surrender later with less. So yeah, let's talk about the actual deal. So actually, before I go to these points, let me actually talk about something else. So the clear idea is that, yeah, Israel shouldn't do this. Whenever Israel negotiates, it can only lose. I mean, again, this will bring in the Palestinian Authority in Gaza. It will basically give them back control. Nothing will be solved. It's not, again, Palestinian Authority is not some sort of like a peace partner to Israel. Terrorists have been crossing the border in the West Bank, have been going into Israel territories. Terrorism is happening in the West Bank. There is no vision that basically in Gaza it will reform to some sort of peace-loving enclave that maybe West Bank is violent, but now Gaza is going to be this sort of free this sort of free and open place and tolerant place. And my main problem with this is, and there's several. So my first question is, when it comes to basically these negotiations, is will the Palestinians accept this? Will they be actually okay with it? And the reason why I'm asking, again, because we've seen in Gaza, which is it's much more supportive of Hamas. It's much more supportive of October 7. Although in many ways it is actually less, uh, but it's definitely, yeah, it's definitely still largely supportive of October 7. I mean, we've seen the Palestinian people actually joining on October 7, joining the Hamas forces. Uh, uh, we've seen that they are holding the Israeli hostages. They are holding them in their homes. Again, we have UNRWA employees having Hamas inside their cars, inside their buildings. We have doctors that know that Hamas is holding hostages in the hospitals and are not doing anything about it. So again, if let's say the Palestinian Authority actually does completely take over, and let's say since these people are vetted by Israel, so let's say it is, let's say, the best the Palestinian people can offer, will these people be actually able to hold order? Will the Palestinian people be content with being with peace with Israel? That'll be like my first problem with this whole deal. Then there is a big question about this negotiation themselves, because whenever you have negotiations, basically you have some representative parties of the people. And my question would be, is Hamas representing the Palestinian people? Is Hamas representing the Palestinian people in Gaza? Because then the question is, if no, which many people seem to believe, that Hamas is this sort of like occupying force, the Palestinian people are just innocent, they are being put down by Hamas, or not literally put down, or in many cases, or some cases they are, but like being suppressed, their ideas are being suppressed, they are not allowed to basically stand up against Hamas. And if this is true, then by what right can they negotiate for them? By what right can Hamas negotiate for these people they do not represent? And again, this would limit to the idea that any sort of negotiation that happens, if Hamas is not representing the Palestinian people will not accept this. They will not accept uh, negotiations from someone who doesn't stand by them. And then, for what I do believe, and someone is saying in the chat, if Hamas is representing the Palestinian people, then again, what were all the past talks about? Yeah, that these are innocent people. Uh, they are just suffering under Hamas rule. No, Hamas does represent them. That's why they can argue for them. That's why. Um, so I was playing in my head in which ways this could go. Imagine if this actually goes towards long-term peace, which if it went to, I would have to consider a lot of things, since we've been advocating a certain view. But I'm pretty confident this will not lead to any actual peace. Again, from all the past negotiations. I mean, I've called this Oslo Accords 2.0, and I'll make some connections to that. Um, uh, Israel shouldn't do this, but Israel shouldn't seem to know with certainty what it should do, which destroyed the threat. So the main reason, or the main justification for I see, especially from, I'm not sure. So I've just seen, I think just before the show, Netanyahu, or at least it might have happened earlier, but someone posted that Netanyahu is committed to this idea. Um, And the main justification I saw is the fact that Hamas won't be allowed to basically rule Gaza if this plan goes completely through. Um, but I think that's also uh, uh, it's a I think there is a problem with that. Um, uh, so yeah. Let me see. Tu- 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 tu. Okay, so let's go to the comparisons to Oslo Accords. Again, Oslo Accords were supposed to be again this path towards peace, but it didn't happen. And uh, yeah, I think something similar will happen here. Let's say this happens perfectly, although even there I'm a bit skeptical. But let's say the negotiations happen, and Hamas actually does agree to completely pulling out. One problem is still you have this organization, Hamas is still existing, and the question is where will they go after? Because uh, this is basically similar to what PLO used to be. Basically, PLO also didn't have a home nation, so it used to go through different things. It was in Lebanon, for example. Uh, that's I think one of the Lebanon wars was because of it, because Israel wanted to crush PLO. But again, PLO was established after that. PLO was institutionalized in the form of the Palestinian Authority. So would similar thing happen with Hamas if, let's say, Hamas completely goes somewhere else? Maybe they'll stay in Qatar. If not, they were already offered that they could stay in Iraq, so they could be in Iraq. And would similar thing happen? Would they just continue their operations from that whatever nation hosts them? They will still be getting foreign support. They will still be getting uh, weapons and money from, all sorts of dictatorships, and will just continue their struggle against Israel, just not from their doorstep, not from Gaza. And would we see again decades in the future the similar thing to Oslo Accords, where again there will be negotiations with Hamas that okay, let's establish them, let's actually give them land, let's include them in the Palestinian Authority, let's include them in some sort of governance, and we would basically be back to square one. Um, so I think that's the comparison sort of to Oslo Accords, and the very problematic thing. Um, Voting could be it's a bit so I think the idea of voting is discussed. Uh, it's a bit annoying because I cannot both read and entertain while still talking. But let me cover one more point I have. So the idea is that yeah, basically the Palestinian Authority. Uh, so I'm not sure how exactly, if it's meant to be that the Palestinian Authority would long term fully take over Gaza. Basically, it will be part of it, as it used to be before Hamas completely took over. Um, or if they are just supposed to be there. But I think the idea has to be that they would be integrated into the Palestinian Authority. I cannot imagine they would just stay completely independent, especially if people from the Palestinian Authority are going to be governing. But what has happened last time when the people from, or specifically not from the Palestinian Authority, but specifically from Fatah, were governing there or were just there? Again, Hamas, supported by the Palestinian people, again, Gaza elected Hamas largely. Um, would the same people will be now okay with them governing over, or would they support similar groups to Hamas? And would just let them take over. And again, uh, and would just get rid of Palestinian Authority, would get rid of Fatah, would get rid of any uh, any people connected with them. Because something to remember is that Mahmoud Abbas, the head of, I always forget because there's so many groups, I never know what exactly. I guess the head of the what is now called the Palestinian state is incredibly unpopular. Palestinian Authority is very unpopular. Expecting them to go into Gaza and actual have actual authority is, I think, also doubtful. So all the futures I see are problematic. I either see group like Hamas, basically the Palestinian Authority, being kicked out by group like Hamas, or maybe by Hamas directly. Hamas will still be existing even after this. It will still, the goal of Hamas will still be to threaten Israel in any way it can. So there's that. Even if actual Palestinian Authority will take over, again, this is not a path to peace. There is still terrorism even coming from them. Uh, Again, the Palestinian people have not been radicalized. They have not been changed in any way, and you won't change it by just. It has to be something much stronger than just ruling over by a different kind of people. Uh, so I think that's the basic idea I have right now. Let me quickly scan the chat. Um, Jordan and Egypt should help too. So I think there's supposed to be some sort of international support. But again, there were very many demands that Netanyahu had. He had like 5 red lines. Um, One of them was that no arms from Egypt will go to Gaza. I don't see how. I'm not sure if he backed down on that because I've read this red line only a few days ago. So maybe he backed down on that, or maybe there is because Israel is supposed to fully pull out, and basically the people from the Palestinian Authority should be there. So I don't see exactly how he wants to enforce that. But we will definitely hear more about it. So this it seems like it's gonna pull through. Uh, we'll see how the negotiations go. We will be informing more about it. Um, but I think for now, that's about all I have to say. I don't see any questions in the chat. But many people are discussing I think a potential one-state solution and how voting rights um, could work, or how basically it could be divided. Uh, so maybe if you search one-state solution or two-state solution with Ayn Rand Center UK in the YouTube search bar, you should be able to find a few episodes where we talked about these ideas. But for now, I think I'll be wrapping up. So there's actually no reality show today, but we will be back tomorrow with both the Daily Objective and the reality show. On the reality show, we'll be discussing Candace Owens again, because she has made uh, some more interesting remarks, let's just say, specifically today when it comes to Adolf Hitler. So she's just asking questions, folks. She's just asking questions. Um, but also today we have a new course starting. We're gonna be it's a new course that's named the analytical approach to the U.S. Constitution. Sorry, the principled analysis of the U.S. Constitution. That's with James Valiant. That's going to be starting in about 2 hours. This is going to be for website members only. When it comes to, if you want to join the Zoom call directly, that's for website members only. I put the link in the chat. And YouTube members, if you're a YouTube member, I believe there's already a scheduled live stream in 2 hours. You'll be able to also watch it. So this is the first session, which is open to all members, and then all the sessions afterwards will be exclusive to our 2 highest memberships. So only Reardon Metal and Midas Mulligan members. But I recommend everyone to upgrading or to becoming a member, at least for this, to see how it is. I mean, you have the membership for a month, so you can check out all our sessions, our study groups, and our book clubs, and you'll see if it's worth it. I think it is worth it to upgrade. So I hope to see many of you in 2 hours on those sessions on that session. And thank you everyone for joining me today, and bye bye.